First up, let's talk about Traceroute. Imagine you're sending a letter across the country, and you want to know every post office it goes through before reaching its final destination. That's exactly what Traceroute does for digital packets. But how does it work? Each packet is sent with a time-to-live TTL value. Every time it passes through a router, the TTL decreases. Once TTL hits 0, the router says, "Hey, time's up," and sends back an error message. By analyzing these messages, we can map out the network path. Why does this matter in ethical hacking? Traceroute helps us understand network topology, detect firewalls, and even find potential attack vectors. Cool, right? Now, let's look at how ethical hackers use Traceroute in the real world. Identifying network topology. By analyzing routes, we can see all the intermediate routers and devices in a network. Detecting firewalls. Some networks block Traceroute, which can hint at a security measure. Finding attack vectors. If we know the network structure, we can identify weak entry points. Real-world example. Think of an ethical hacker trying to test a company's security. By running a Traceroute, they might find an unprotected router, an easy target for cybercriminals. Next up, email tracking. Have you ever wondered how marketers know when you've opened an email? Well, it's not magic, it's tracking. Here's how it works. A tiny, invisible tracking pixel loads when you open the email. Unique links inside the email can record when and where you click. Some systems even track how long you view an email. Sounds powerful, right? But with great power comes great responsibility. Why is email tracking used? Companies and individuals use email tracking for different reasons. Marketers track open rates to see if their campaigns are working. Sales teams use it to follow up with potential clients. Security teams use it to detect phishing attempts and suspicious behavior. Ethical dilemma. But hold on, this raises privacy concerns. Should companies be allowed to track emails without user consent? What do you think? Let us know in the comments. Real-world examples and tools for email tracking. So what tools help with email tracking? Platforms like MailChimp and HubSpot offer built-in tracking. Browser extensions like Yesware and Boomerang can track email opens and clicks. Real-world example. A salesperson sends out 100 emails and sees that 60 people opened them. That's a 60% open rate. Now they know who to follow up with. Smart, right? Let's shift gears to port scanning. Imagine a security guard checking which doors in a building are locked. Port scanning does the same, but for computers. Hackers send probes to a target system to check for open ports. These open ports can reveal running services and potential vulnerabilities. Now let's break down the different types of scans. There are multiple types of port scans, each with its strengths and weaknesses. TCP Connect scan establishes a full connection but is slow. SYN scan, faster but can be detected by firewalls. UDP scan checks for open UDP ports but can be noisy. FIN scan tries to slip past security systems unnoticed. Real-world example. A penetration tester runs an Nmap scan and finds an open database port. If this database has weak passwords, it could be a hacker's goldmine. What tools help with port scanning? Nmap, the Swiss Army knife of network scanning. 8.3 lets you craft custom network packets. Masscan, the fastest port scanner out there. Host, if you're serious about cybersecurity, learning these tools is a must. Let's talk about network scanning. Port scanning helps find open ports. Vulnerability scanning detects weak software. Service scanning identifies running services. Real-world example. An ethical hacker scans a company's network and finds that one server is still running Windows XP. Yikes! That's a huge security risk. Finally, we have OS fingerprinting. This technique helps identify the operating system of a target. Tools like Nmap analyze TCP/IP stack characteristics. They examine service banners and response times to detect OS versions. Real-world example. A penetration tester identifies an old Linux server running an outdated kernel. That's a major vulnerability hackers can exploit. Vulnerability scanning identifies and evaluates security weaknesses in computer systems and networks, like a health checkup for cybersecurity. It detects flaws in software, hardware, configurations, and processes. Why is it crucial? It helps organizations stay proactive, fix issues before attackers exploit them, assess risks, prioritize vulnerabilities based on severity, ensure compliance, meet security standards like HIPAA, PCI DSS, and GDPR. Now that we know why vulnerability scanning matters, let's explore its types. Network scans identify risks in routers, firewalls, and network devices using tools like Nessus and Qualys. Web app scans detect SQL injection, XSS, and CSRF threats with OWASP, ZAP, and Qualys. Database scans find SQL injection risks and misconfigurations using DB Security Scanner. Regular scans help secure systems from cyber threats. Here's how a vulnerability scan works. Asset discovery identifies systems, apps, and devices to scan. Scanning tools like Nessus check for known vulnerabilities. False positives analysts review results to filter out errors. Prioritization rank vulnerabilities by severity and risk. Remediation fix issues via patches, configs, or updates. Rescanning verify fixes and check for new threats. Imagine you're an IT admin running a Nessus scan on your network. It detects an SQL injection vulnerability on your web server, a risk that could expose sensitive data. To fix it, you apply a patch or install a web application firewall F for protection. Afterward, you rescan the server to confirm the fix and check for new vulnerabilities. This proactive approach ensures ongoing security and reduces the risk of cyber threats. Simple, right? Ethical hackers, especially CEH-certified ones, follow a structured scanning approach. Live hosts use ping sweeps to find active systems. OS fingerprinting analyze TCP/IP stacks to identify OS types. Service ID scan open ports with Nmap to detect running services. Vulnerability scan use Nessus or OpenVAS to find weaknesses. Network mapping tools like ZenMap visualize network structure and risks. One of the most powerful tools in vulnerability scanning is Nmap. It's a network scanner that can help you find vulnerabilities across your network. Let's look at some of the commonly used Nmap switches. Basic scans. For example, NIDE-SS performs a TCP SYN scan, stealthy and fast, while DAS-ST performs a TCP Connect scan, more reliable but slower. Timing and output. You can also control the scan speed with BAST and set the output format with options like OX for XML or MASH-ON for normal format. Nmap offers powerful scan customization. Target specification T05 controls scan speed. A. Aggressive scan for OS versions and scripts. V. Increases verbosity. ONXG saves output in human-readable XML or greppable formats. Scan techniques SS stealthy SYN scan. ST full TCP handshake. SU finds open UDP ports. SNFA various stealth and firewall mapping scans. Nmap goes beyond basic scans with scripting features to gather detailed info. SC runs default scripts to check for common vulnerabilities. A triggers an aggressive script scan for deeper analysis. IL lets you scan multiple targets from a file. ONOXOG save results in human-readable XML or greppable formats. Example, nmap-s saox scan results.xml 198.1100. This command scans, detects OS info, and saves output in XML. Now let's zoom in on the SYN scan, a stealthy method for detecting open ports without fully establishing a TCP connection. Initiation. The scanner sends a SYN packet to a target port. Server response. An open port replies with a SYN ACK packet signaling willingness to connect. Half-open connection. The scanner then sends an RST packet to avoid completing the handshake. Reset. This terminates the connection, evading intrusion detection systems. SYN scan, pros and cons. Advantages, stealthy, doesn't complete TCP handshake, making it harder to detect. Fast, quicker than other scans, ideal for large networks. Disadvantages, less info, doesn't reveal exact service versions, requiring follow-up scans. Real-world use. A security analyst uses Nmap SYN scan to find open ports, assess vulnerabilities, and strengthen network security. Stealth scans are methods used to scan networks without triggering alarms on intrusion detection systems, IDS, and firewalls. TCP SYN scan sends a CN packet to a port to identify open ports, aborting the connection before completion. FIN scan sends a TCP packet with the FIN flag, where closed ports respond with RST. These techniques are stealthy, reducing the likelihood of detection while scanning for open ports. They help minimize the risk of detection when probing networks for vulnerabilities. NullScan sends a TCP packet with all flags set to 0, looking for responses from open or closed ports. If a port is open, it may respond with an RST. XMScan uses a specially crafted packet with the FIN, SYN, and URG flags set to determine open or closed ports. Both techniques are stealthy, but they are less reliable and may not work on all systems. Ethical hackers often use these methods to scan for open ports while minimizing the risk of detection from IDS or firewalls. XMScan is used to identify open ports on a system by sending a TCP packet with multiple flags set, resembling a Christmas tree. If the port is open, the target ignores the packet. If closed, an RST response is sent. XMScans can bypass some firewalls and IDS, making them stealthy and faster than other scan types. However, they may trigger alerts on some systems. Ethical hackers use XMScans to assess network security and identify vulnerabilities, especially when avoiding detection is essential. A real-world example of XMScan is an ethical hacker using Nmap to scan a network for open ports without triggering alerts. The Nmap command, nmap-sx target IP, sends XMScan packets to a target system. This technique can be effective for discovering vulnerabilities while evading detection by firewalls or IDS. The results help assess the security posture of a network and find weak points, which could be exploited if not properly addressed. NullScan sends a TCP packet with all flags set to 0, targeting open ports stealthily. If the port is open, no response is expected, while closed ports respond with an RST packet. This technique is used to identify open ports without triggering alarms. Ethical hackers often use this method to bypass firewalls and intrusion detection systems IDS. The Nmap command nmap-ssn target IP is used to execute the NullScan. It is useful for stealthy assessments of network security. NullScan has advantages such as stealthiness, being less likely to trigger alarms on IDS and firewalls. It can be faster than other scan types, but has reliability issues, as newer systems may not respond predictably. While it remains undetected in many cases, it can still trigger alerts on some advanced systems. Ethical hackers use NullScans to avoid detection while identifying open ports and vulnerabilities. The Nmap command nmap-sn facilitates this scan type for security assessments. A FIN scan uses the FIN flag to probe ports for open or closed states. It evades firewalls that block SYN packets but may not detect FIN packets. If a port is closed, the target responds with an RST packet. If open, there is no response. FIN scans are useful for bypassing simple firewalls and IDS, but may not be reliable for all systems. They are often used when other scan types, like SYN scans, are blocked by network defenses. In Nmap, the FIN scan is executed with the nmap-sf command. A penetration tester can use this scan to identify open ports on a server, even if firewalls block SYN packets. For example, testing ports 80 HTTP and 443 HTTPS might reveal open ports even when a firewall blocks initial connection attempts. The FIN scan provides insights into potential vulnerabilities, especially when conventional methods like SYN scans are ineffective. Ethical hacking considerations when using FIN scans include ensuring permission is obtained for testing. Unauthorized scans are illegal. FIN scans may not work consistently, as some systems may not respond as expected. Moreover, modern firewalls and intrusion detection systems are capable of detecting FIN scans. Ethical hackers should weigh the scan's potential effectiveness against the risk of detection, always operating within the boundaries of legal and ethical guidelines. HTTP tunneling involves encapsulating other protocols like SSH or VPN within HTTP/HTTPS traffic. It allows these protocols to bypass firewalls or proxies that only allow web traffic. By establishing an HTTP connection, often using the connect method, the traffic is disguised as regular web traffic. This technique is useful for navigating restricted networks and accessing services otherwise blocked by network security systems. HTTP tunneling is crucial for maintaining secure connections in restrictive environments. HTTP tunneling uses methods like HTTP connect and post to bypass network restrictions. The connect method establishes a tunnel through a proxy by sending a request to connect to a target. Post tunneling encapsulates data within HTTP post requests, used when connect is blocked. The primary advantages include bypassing firewalls, circumventing content filters, and obfuscating traffic to appear as normal web traffic, making it harder to detect. This technique is used in environments with strict network policies to access restricted services. Disadvantages of HTTP tunneling include performance overhead from encapsulating data, which can reduce network speed. Advanced firewalls and proxies with deep packet inspection (DPI) can detect tunneling by analyzing HTTP payloads for unusual patterns. Tunneling may also limit functionality in certain applications due to network configuration or tunneling restrictions. Despite these drawbacks, HTTP tunneling is still widely used for bypassing restrictive network policies. Real-world examples of HTTP tunneling include bypassing corporate firewalls by remote workers to access internal resources, accessing geo-restricted content by using proxy servers, and using tunneling and ethical hacking to establish reverse shells or command and control channels behind firewalls. In penetration testing, HTTP tunneling can help ethical hackers explore vulnerabilities in firewalled systems, creating secure access to networks otherwise blocked. IP spoofing involves an attacker forging the source IP address in network packets, making them appear as though they are coming from another source. This technique is used to hide the attacker's identity, launch denial of service, DOS attacks, or bypass access controls. The attacker modifies the source IP address field in the IP header, causing the target system to respond to the forged address, which prevents the attacker from being traced easily. IP spoofing techniques include blind spoofing, where the attacker cannot see responses from the target, and non-blind spoofing, where the attacker can view the responses. Blind spoofing is used in DOS attacks to flood targets with traffic, while non-blind spoofing allows for more sophisticated attacks, such as TCP hijacking. Spoofing grants anonymity, bypasses access controls, and can amplify DOS attacks, but it comes with technical complexities.
Disadvantages of IP spoofing include the difficulty in receiving responses during blind spoofing and the complexity of non-blind spoofing, which requires advanced techniques like TCP sequence number prediction. Modern security systems, including firewalls and intrusion detection systems, can detect spoofing attempts through ingress filtering and other methods. Despite these defenses, spoofing remains a potent technique for attackers seeking anonymity and to bypass controls.
Real-world examples of IP spoofing include DOS attacks like Smurf attacks, where ICMP echo requests are sent with spoofed source addresses to flood the target with traffic. Another example is TCP hijacking, where an attacker takes control of an existing TCP connection using spoofed packets. Historically, spoofing bypassed firewalls that relied on source IP addresses for access control. Ethical hackers use spoofing in control tests to identify security weaknesses in networks. SNMP, Simple Network Management Protocol. Enumeration involves using SNMP to gather information about a target system, such as system details and network configurations. Although SNMP is intended for legitimate network management, it can be misused by attackers to identify potential vulnerabilities. SNMP communication uses the Management Information Base (MIB), which organizes managed objects, and the Object Identifier (OID), which uniquely identifies each object in the system. Key components of SNMP include the SNMP Manager, which sends requests, the SNMP Agent, which responds to requests, the Management Information Base (MIB), which holds system data, the Object Identifier (OID) used to identify each object, and the community string, a password-like string for authentication. A weak community string or misconfigured SNMP can be exploited by attackers to access sensitive network information. From an attacker's perspective, SNMP enumeration provides detailed information about a system, including network configurations and vulnerabilities. This can help attackers identify weak points and map network infrastructure. However, SNMP queries are often logged, and intrusion detection systems (IDS) can detect enumeration attempts. If SNMP is securely configured with strong community strings and proper access control, enumeration becomes significantly more difficult. Real-world examples of SNMP enumeration in ethical hacking include gathering system information, such as the OS version on a web server, to search for known vulnerabilities. SNMP can also map network devices like routers and switches, helping attackers understand the network topology. Attackers often target devices with default community strings like public or private to gain unauthorized access. Ethical hackers use SNMP enumeration during reconnaissance to gather information and identify vulnerabilities, helping organizations improve security by finding weak points. Enumeration steps include network enumeration, such as ping sweeps and port scanning, to discover live hosts and open ports. SNMP enumeration helps gather information on network devices. Operating system enumeration involves banner grabbing and OS fingerprinting to determine OS versions. User and group enumeration methods like null sessions in Windows or UIDGID enumeration in Linux identify user accounts. Share enumeration lists shared resources, while application enumeration detects running apps and web server configurations to find vulnerabilities.